Bernard Sander has released a statement in regards to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. I watched this statement earlier. I think it's very good, and I want to play this because I think it's very important to highlight that there are some American politicians that definitely get this, what's going on, and are focusing on very important parts of what's going on in Ukraine. And so I want to play Bernard's statement here, and then we will discuss, or I might pause throughout the statement and then also discuss. So it's 5 minutes, though. Let's get in.
Right now, as we speak, invading Russian military forces are moving across Ukraine. We are witnessing the most massive military operation in Europe since World War II. There must be no ambiguity in acknowledging that what the whole world is seeing today is nothing less than a blatant violation of international law and of basic human decency. This war will likely kill thousands of people and create millions of refugees. At a time when the global community is already struggling with the COVID pandemic and climate change,
So I want to pause here to talk about this. Now, again, there's been a lot of info coming out of Russia in regards to COVID metrics. Russia is obviously significantly suppressing their data when it comes to COVID. I've seen, now again, none of the, it's really hard to get accurate data, let alone, data that, any data, let alone accurate data, I should say. But I've seen some statements from some people that look at the excess death metric, like how many people died from every year from like 2010 to like 2019, and then compare that to 2020, 21, 22, etc., to see how many more people died than usual. And it appears that Russia has been, again, significantly suppressing their COVID data. And so it's probably safe to say that Russia is number one as far as COVID deaths. It's probably safe to say that. But again, it's impossible to really understand just how Florida in the United States is suppressing their COVID data significantly. It's very hard to know how many deaths and cases there are in Florida. It's even harder to know what's going on in Russia. So again, COVID is tearing apart the poor communities all across this planet. And yet, again, these Hitler-esque world superpower leaders like Putin are just deciding, all right, we're going to take this time when people are already suffering to make them suffer even more. It's taking advantage of the fact that we are in a terrible situation. But again, it needs to be understood that almost every country has failed on COVID. It seems that just the theory of government has failed. Like at this point, I would say just the idea that a government structure exists and is capable of preventing pandemics seems to have been thrown out the window. But again, everyone in the world right now is already dealing with enough when it comes to COVID, especially, and also when it comes to climate change. There's these freak storms, especially destroying people like with rising heat in the Middle East and other stuff. A lot of people's livelihoods are being destroyed by climate change and COVID, and now Putin's trying to escalate into a world war. So again, it needs to be understood that this whole thing, not so good. So I'm glad that Bernie is actually pointing this out, because you're not going to see Biden talk about COVID. Biden doesn't give a fuck about COVID. He wants more people to die of COVID, just like Putin does, and just like a lot of these other world leaders do. And again, also, the world leaders want everyone to die from climate change as well. They don't give a fuck. It's all about their little maps and their borders. Oh, what part of the map do I own? Well, you're going to own no parts of the map when you're dead, first of all. Second of all, there's going to be no more map when climate change floods the whole planet. But anyway, let's keep going.
This war could plunge Europe into long-term economic and political instability. Make no mistake about it. The effects of this war will be felt here in the United States and countries throughout the world.
So a lot of people, I want to be very clear that I agree with this as well. A lot of people are going like, "Oh, you're an American. Why do you care about Ukraine? It's not going to affect you." In my opinion, I think that is so foolish to say. Now, obviously, again, I am not nearly as affected as people that live in Ukraine, of course, or like Belarus or Poland, or any of these other nations that are close to Russia or Russia, itself. So obviously the effects of the war do not affect me as much as people that live in these countries. But again, the way that our world is connected, the way that trade works, the way that our global economy is set up, the fact that there's going to be big amounts of war. Why would anyone think Putin would stop at Ukraine? Again, this is part one of a very long plan, probably a near the end of life crisis for Putin. He wants to make Russia great again or something, right? So again, there's no indication that he's going to stop at Ukraine. If he continues to push into especially NATO territory, this is going to be really bad, really quick for a lot of people, especially people all over the world. So again, it needs to be understood that it doesn't affect us right now. We're not, having airstrikes on our homes like people in Ukraine are. But again, the economic fallout from this is probably going to be quite severe. And again, the destabilization as well, just causing a bunch of anxiety for everyone all across the world is also a very palpable thing. So thank you, Bernie, for pointing that out as well.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has justified this war in various ways, including by claiming in a recent speech that Ukraine is not a real country, but simply a part of Russia. Regardless of what revisionist historical argument or flimsy legal pretext Putin may offer, this war is clearly an act of premeditated aggression against Ukraine and its people. This aggression is unacceptable, and the nations of the world must respond vigorously to defend democracy and the rule of law. In my view, it is clear that the United States and our NATO allies made real efforts over the past weeks and months in trying to address Putin's stated security concerns. Tragically, those offers were not reciprocated. As a result, now is the time to maintain unity with our allies and impose severe sanctions on Vladimir Putin and his government. Severe sanctions. These moves should not only isolate the Russian economy, but should include freezing access to the billions of dollars that Putin and his oligarch cronies have stashed in European and American banks.
So again, there's a lot going on with the sanctions. Now again, the way that the global economy is structured is a lot of these countries that have their own currencies, right, will have other currencies in their banks, and they will have their currencies in other banks, so to provide liquidity and stuff for currency transfers and exchanges. So again, the idea here is that we could theoretically, we being the rest of the world, could theoretically freeze all the transaction of rubles in every bank and stuff. But again, the problem with sanctions on the economy is that Russia is an authoritarian government. They're controlled by oligarchs and an authoritarian tyrant. And so it's very, even if you do try to specifically sanction the oligarchs, they'll probably be fine. And they're probably just, what they're going to do is probably just engage in more repressive tactics against the people of Russia as well. It's a very difficult line to figure out what the best response is when it comes to economic sanctions, because again, Russian civilians do not deserve to be hurt because their leader is a crazy motherfucker. That said, it's very difficult to construct a scenario where Russian civilians aren't hurt. Again, Putin is going to be, at the end of the day, able to do whatever he wants to the Russian civilians. We're seeing that there's mass demonstrations and protests in Russia, in Moscow, St. Petersburg, and other cities that are being met with extreme repression. Many thousands of people are being arrested. So, in my view, and again, I'm not here to provide any sort of solutions here. In my view, I would say the most extreme form of sanctions possible seems to be the best route to take. Because the way I see it, Russian civilians are going to be hurt a lot. They're going to be hurt no matter what happens, right? So I don't know. Other than invading Russia and liberating its people, right? Which I don't necessarily agree with. Other than that, I don't know what world economic sanctions aren't going to affect the Russian civilians. And again, Russia's controlled by oligarchs. They're controlled by rich people, petro billionaires. The government of Russia is basically just one. It's basically what Putin is trying to do is restore the monarchy. To my understanding, that's kind of what his goals are. And again, how do you engage in that? Well, you just get a lot of money, and you just buy out a private military, and you basically can do whatever you want. So again, let's just keep going. Bernie's statement again so far very correct.
At a time when he is inflicting enormous suffering and destruction on the world, Putin, one of the wealthiest people on earth, should not be allowed to enjoy the billions he has stolen from the people of Russia.
That's correct.
I would also note that today, even as the Ukrainian people are bravely resisting this aggression, anti-war protests have taken place in 40 different Russian cities.
Now again, shout outs to Bernard for talking about the fact that protests are going on. Again, it's extremely important to know that Russia is... Now, you think protesting in the USA is difficult? I've protested in the USA. I've dealt with state repression in the USA. I've covered it extensively on the show. Russia is a whole different ballgame. There is no pretense of free protest in Russia, like we have in the First Amendment, where people pretend that there's freedom of assembly, but then they try their best to stifle that and fuck around with you. In Russia, they don't even fuck around. They don't care. There's no cat and mouse. There's no game that they play. They just fuck your shit up. That's it. You go out and protest the government, your shit gets fucked up. You're going to die mysteriously in a prison somewhere. That's it. There is no if, there is no and, etc. And so again, to protest this in Russia is an extreme act of bravery, and it needs to be understood. Because also, imagine this, right? Why would someone risk their life, right, to protest a war in a country that they're not currently living in? Why? It's because they've got nothing to lose. They know that this is wrong. They know that this is unacceptable, and they have nothing to lose, right? Russian people have been massacred financially over the last 30 years of oligarchic rule, and it's just a really bad deal that they've got. So they feel like they've got nothing to lose, and they're going out there, and they're basically committing suicide by cop, engaging in these protests. Who knows where these people are going to be going after they are arrested? Who knows what the conditions they're going to be treated in? Who knows if they're going to be killed? Who knows? There's really just no way to know. And so again, extreme solidarity. I'm going to be getting into some of the protest footage as well very soon, but extreme solidarity to those protesting within Russia itself.
And at least 1,000 Russian citizens have been arrested for opposing the war. Today, I stand in solidarity with these incredibly brave people. In an authoritarian country like Russia, protest is an act of enormous courage. That is why Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny, who has done so much to expose the corruption within the Putin government, sits in prison on trumped-up charges, having survived an assassination attempt. Putin may rule Russia today, but he cannot hide the truth forever. His day will come, hopefully sooner than later. Today, I hope all of us will stand with the Ukrainian people against this war, and with the Russian people who are demonstrating against their corrupt, reckless president who started it. The images of war that we are seeing are painful, and I fear that worse may yet be coming. In the midst of all this horror, one area where American leadership can be very helpful is in providing aid for those refugees fleeing war. The United States must work closely with our international partners in providing humanitarian relief for the Ukrainian people, and we should also commit to accepting more refugees here in our own country.
Now, I hate to be that person here, but I'm going to. This is something that we need to apply, of course, not just to the people of Ukraine, but especially people from the Middle East as well. We need to understand that the United States of America is a bad actor when it comes to a lot of things going on, especially in the Middle East. So everything that Bernie is saying about Ukraine, I agree with 100%. But also, we need to understand that we need to create a society and a culture where we can bring in refugees from all around the world, because if we do create a society and a culture where we just bring in the white refugees, again, that's a little interesting. So I just want to say we need to bring in all refugees in this country. We have more than enough space in the United States of America to bring in millions and millions of people from war destabilized countries, especially. We have an obligation to do so in a lot of the countries that America itself has destabilized. So I want to add that on there too. Again, that's not to say that, U.S. is evil no matter what, obviously. I don't want to be misinterpreted as one of those like Jackson Hinkle freaks. But again, it needs to be understood that the U.S. has caused a lot of problems itself, and we need to also clean up these problems. This is a decent chance for the United States to try to recover its image on the global stage, and I hope that it goes in that direction. I'm very... it's unlikely to occur, but this is a good chance for America to potentially have a redemption tour. That's what I hope for. I want America to be the good guy. I live in America. This is my government. I want America to be the good guy. That's my ideal scenario, right? But, so I'm just throwing that out there. We can start there and maybe hopefully bring things back to a good position of taking in Ukrainian refugees as well.
Many of you are no doubt wondering what you can help do to end this terrible conflict. In my view, the most important thing that we can all do right now is stand in solidarity with the Ukrainian people against this war and with the Russian people who are risking so much to demonstrate against their corrupt, reckless president who started it. Putin and his oligarch friends seek a divided world and the destruction of democracy. Our worldview is different. We want to see robust democracies in every country on earth, including Russia.
And including the United States, just saying, the United States Electoral College gotta go. We need to do a lot of reforms here. We cannot keep we can't pretend like all of our domestic problems are solved just because World War III might be starting. Again, the United States of America is on the brink of a fascist takeover. This is not impossible. We have not, the end of history kind of mind set needs to be dismantled entirely. It's very possible. It's very possible that democracy will die and we will go into thousands of years of empire fighting. It happened before in world history. There have been democracies that existed in this planet 3,000, 4,000 years ago. Where are they now? Right? What happened to them? Right? They got fucking dismantled and destroyed. It needs to be understood. We are not at the end of history. We are not at the beginning of the democratic era and the world is changing for the better. At any point, at any time, right, this world can plunge into absolute chaos and imperial empire, real-time strategy video game based stuff. All right, so we cannot pretend, again, and I'm not saying that Bernie is doing that. Obviously, Bernie's talking about Ukraine here. But I want to be very clear that the United States is on the brink of a fascist takeover. It is, look at what's going on. I'm going to be talking about fascism in the United States later in this program. It's not great.
We want a world in which people come together to address the enormous problems facing us all. At the end of the day, it will be that common humanity based on the principles of justice that brings us together and enables us to prevail. Thank you very much.
So again, Bernie with a very, very good statement on this. Again, I just got, shout outs to Bernie. I mean, really, better than Biden when it comes to this statement. Now, obviously, Biden is president. Bernie is not. So the context is different. Biden is unable to say probably everything that he's thinking, whereas Bernie is probably a little bit more free to say what's on his mind. That's not to run cover for Biden at all. I'm just saying. But again, Bernie really lays out most of the important bits. We need to accept refugees in this country. We need to provide humanitarian aid. And in my opinion, we need to do something to help Ukrainian people even more than that. I don't know what that is. I don't know how to, we need to create some way to bring people that are in Ukraine out of Ukraine if they need to or want to. Make sure that their families are safe. Make sure that they're, their money that they can transfer, that they can, have places to stay and, aren't just completely stripped away from everything that they've ever had. There's a lot of things that the United States can do and should do to help the Ukrainian people. And again, we need to be helping people all around the world. we can't just pretend Ukraine is the only area that's engaging in war. There's currently drone strikes going on all across the Middle East as well. And this is a mentality that we can use. This is a moment that I think we can use to shore up Americans to be supporting good policies when it comes to foreign policy. And, maybe we can get some pushback against war. Because, again, if everyone in America can be convinced that Russia is bad for doing this, then we all need to be convinced that the United States is bad for drone striking children in Afghanistan. So, again, we got to use this moment to make people really wake up to what's going on. Imperialism is not gone. Again, we have not reached the end of history at all. Imperialism could become the dominant form of how this world functions again. World War II was less than 100 years ago, folks. It is not ancient history. It is very, 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 very recent history. There are people alive right now who were in concentration camps in World War II. So it's very, important to understand there are people alive right now that were in concentration camps in the United States of America. Because again, reminder, the USA also had concentration camps as well. And so we need to be very clear here that, the world is this could be the great unraveling, as people are calling it, or it could be a time where we can basically, all agree, yeah, this whole thing, this whole imperialist nonsense needs to go. This is it. This is the most blatant form, the most blatant act of imperialism we've seen, at least since the Iraq War. But again, it's a very bad deal. And I think that we can use this opportunity to get a lot of Americans on the same page. At least I hope. I hope so. But anyway, Bernie with a very good statement. Goddamn Bernard. Love that Bernard. Out of all the Bernards, that's one of the best Bernards, folks. I gotta tell you. Very good Bernard. Very good, very good.